Okay, you are live.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm looking for approval of the agenda for the May 3rd, 2021 meeting. Moved by Doug, second by Wenda. Any questions or comments on it? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Any conflicts, pecuniary interest, or the general nature thereof? Showing none. I'm looking for adoption of the minutes of April 19th, 2021 Stone Mill regular council meeting. Moved by Kevin, second by John. Any questions or comments about them? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Bylaws and resolutions. A bylaw 2021 being a bylaw to appoint building inspector authority to James Richmond. I'm looking for first, second, and third reading. Moved by Kevin, second by Debbie. Any questions on the bylaw? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. We'll go to staff reports. CAO clerk Brooks, paid sick leave. Brian.
Your worship, thank you. First of all, I just want to confirm that as part of the bylaw that's passed this evening, Mr. Richmond was successful in passing his Part 8 inspection and has now got a BCIN number assigned to his name. So that's the relevance of passing the bylaw for inspection, as he's now qualified to do so. So we're pretty excited to have full staff and look forward to him growing. Your worship, the report that's here this evening, the paid sick leave, is actually something that's progressed considerably since the time of the drafting of the report. For council members that may or may not be aware, the federal government has launched a program that has a benefit of up to $500 per week as a federal benefit as part of paid sick leave. In response, the province was looking at what they would do, whether they would match the federal project or whether they would look at doing something of their own. Since the time that this report has been drafted, it's been confirmed that they're working through legislation that WSIB would essentially coordinate a paid sick leave, I believe, of approximately 3 days for a provincial benefit. So this information actually come to council. It started as a request from a resident that just wanted our council to take a position. Included in that position and that request, they also wanted council to confirm to the public, just so that people were aware of what our paid sick leave was. And it's important to note that our paid sick leave is a benefit to full-time staff member, anybody that's eligible to benefits, which are full-time staff members. And so that paid sick leave is up to 80 hours on an annual basis of personal/sick leave. Anything over and above that is done without pay. So I just wanted to publicly make sure that council were aware of that policy and put this on there for council to consider any further position. Since the progression of the report, it's at least my position and our HR department's position that we believe that what the federal and provincial government has did and its applicability to our part-time staff, that we believe that it's relatively standard to what we have as far as benefits for full and part-time people, but we'll await council's direction if they wish anything further.
Any comments on this? Go ahead, Wenda.
Towards the end of the document, it talks about what our existing full-time sick benefit is. And it says, if you've used up all your sick time, then that's it. With this particular one, even though it's geared to casual and part-time receiving the $500 a week or the 3 days, would full-time people also be able to tap into that if their sickness is due to COVID, even though they'd expired all of their other sick time?
Thank you, Councillor Lalande. These benefits are for workplaces that don't already have plans. So given the fact that our plan actually exceeds the entitlement, you can also see as part of that, we also have long-term and short-term disability as part of a benefit coverage. So if they exceeded that time, they would also then have access to potentially their vacation time, or they could use a long-term or short-term disability in the event of an additional insurance coverage. Plus, if they exceeded ours, they could make a personal application to the federal benefit, but I'm not sure that they would be successful based on the current platform.
Okay, Linda,
Yes, thanks.
go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our stated written policy is quite good. It's a norm in the industry standard with our peers. So I don't believe we need to make any change to our written policy. In the past, though, we have had an unwritten policy where there was a particular hardship or whatever, where we've helped employees out, i.e. long-term disability, where we've paid the medical benefits, whatever, different cases. And I would think that in this case, if somebody was particularly disadvantaged due to COVID, that this council would support on an individual basis, helping them out if it needed another couple of days or something like that. I don't think there's a need to write it. We've always had that policy that we wouldn't see somebody disadvantaged. And I think what we got is adequate right now for our employees. In fact, I think they're well treated.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. And I failed to mention that there is discretionary powers in the HR policy that allows me, under certain circumstances as the CAO, to approve additional time should it be warranted. So we have, in my 7 years here, we've utilized that twice, both in cases of family illnesses that required extra attention in the last days, if you will. So that power is there, but it's the sick leave specific that we have not had to endure because we have the long-term and short-term that has provided considerable wage protection while they've been off.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead, Sherry.
I'm sorry if you said this a few minutes ago, but can you explain to me again the benefits, if any, for part-time staff?
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. So our benefit program is not extended to part-time staff, part-time or seasonal staff. It's only extended to full-time staff. In this case, how the part-time or seasonal staff would access that is they would still have access to the federal and provincial benefit, i.e. as an example, if the equivalent of 2 weeks worked for a full-time staff member, the 3 days, if it was say a landfill operator, it's a day and a half per week. That's essentially the equivalent of 2 additional weeks, so to speak, as time off. I know it's kind of weighting it based on their hours per week, but it's essentially the same consideration. But I think the federal benefit could also be applied to as well for the benefit of a part-time or seasonal employee.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I guess I have a little concern here on I'm going to read this one paragraph here. It says, at present, the Township of Stone Mills has a sick leave policy that applies to all full-time employees, as the leave is part of the employee benefit package. Employees are granted 10 sick personal leave days per calendar year, with a 50% cash value of unused days a year. We have a pretty good policy of 10 days, but with holidays and that, at the end of the year, people don't use their sick days, and I think 6 days are there for a purpose for anybody being sick. I guess I didn't realize, I haven't looked at this policy, but I'm not really in favor of that 50% cash out at the end of the year. When you got 10 days, we people go to work. If people are going to work or sick and gain at the end of the year, I have a real problem with that. I think that's something that should be discussed at a later date. Anybody got any comments, or Brian?
Yeah, Your Worship, that benefit, I would have to rely on Jeff as the longest standing member. That policy has been long predated to me, Your Worship. I'm not sure the date of inception, but it's considerably got more serviceable years here than I do.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, but I just have an issue with that. Go ahead, Wenda.
So I work at a place where you don't carry your sick days forward and you don't get paid. If you use them, you use them. If you don't get paid at the end of the year for, coming to work and not using up your sick time. I've also seen people not use their sick time when they should because they want to save it and get that cash. And they are coming to work when they're a little sick or a lot sick. So I don't think that's a good practice either. I know there are lots of places though that do pay out the sick time at the end of the year. I don't know that it's a really good practice from a health perspective. And I think if you, it's designed as a sick, it's for, its purpose is so that people don't struggle financially when they're sick.
Yeah, and
I
I
mean,
agree, I agree 100%. If I go to work, I work for myself. You know, and I go to work sick, that's fine and dandy, but I have a real problem with that there, a payout at the end of the year. Go ahead, Doug, I think you've seen your hand up.
Yeah, this, I'm not saying this is the case with our people, but it was something that was asked for and put in a long time ago. You have to understand, and a lot of people have difficulty with the understanding. Sick days are a benefit. They're there when you need them. They're there for you to take off when you're sick. There has been cases, I'm not going to say in our organization, but in some where people seen them as just another day they could take off. So, hey, I got 10, I'll take 10 off, you know, and that's not what it was intended for. So I agree with you. If you're sick, you definitely should use your 10 days, you know, but there was people that asked first and said, hey, we never get sick. So, you know, we could get a little compensation here. That's why it was put in. And it was back around amalgamation time, I think, when it was put in. It's been there a long time.
But I
don't think it's been used that much though.
No, but I just look at the end of the year. Somebody's got 6-7 weeks holidays and they don't use them. They're definitely not going to use their sick time. So they're going to get a check for that week. And this year there's different people got holidays. I'm not mixing holidays with the other, but it's a pretty good bonus at the end of the year. And
maybe we should see how much it's used. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I would like to see, you know, the figures for last year, if that's okay with the rest of council, to see what have been used, because sick leave's there for a purpose, and it's not for somebody to put money in their pocket at 1st of January, whatever. Somebody else had their hand up there. Go ahead, Wenda.
Yeah, I should have added too that where I work, and it is different from the public sector, but if you don't use any of your sick days at all, if you don't have one sick day and you've been healthy and you've, you know, come to work every day that you're supposed to, at the end of the year, you get a gift from the board of directors thanking you. And it can be, an iPod or, you know, lots of different choices. You pick which choice you want and you get that. So it's an incentive of sorts, but more than that, it's a thank you for, you know, being healthy kind of thing. But we certainly don't get cash back.
Anybody else have go ahead, Brian.
Your worship, I just want to make sure that there's clarification. There is no payout of vacation on a normal year. The only year that it was granted as an additional approval was in 2020. That was COVID related. So if you don't use your vacation, there's no payout of vacation. The only payout value is normally the personal/sick leave, which is paid out at 50% of the rate. So worst case scenarios, it could be equivalent of 1 week, but there's no monetary value to vacation. It's also considered a benefit. If you don't use it, you lose it. So the only time that was approved as a payout was last year, just due to the circumstances of COVID.
Hey, Kevin, do you have something? Oh, sorry.
No,
seen your-
that maybe it is something that we could look at later down the road, Eric. Like you say, have a look at it and figure out how many people are using it as a payout or sick time, and maybe it's something we should look at.
And I don't think sick days paid should be a benefit to the person at the end of the year. I mean, they're there to protect their people. If they're past that, we can step into, as Brian said, to the other. So anyway, I guess what I'm going to, who's got their hand up? Sorry, John, go ahead.
Yes,
Your
thank you.
face.
Sorry. So we're talking about it as sick time. It's also personal time, I think. Is that not right, Brian?
That's correct. It's called personal/sick leave. Quite honestly, for the rest of council, if somebody's individual child is ill, or in mental health day, etc., it's essentially without requirement for response unless requested. So it took that sick portion off, as there's a number of other reasons that could come in to play for days, whether that's a family sickness, attending a family, doctor's appointment, treatments with parents, etc. I think that's the dynamic that it's created, but it maxes out at that 80 hours for a full-time employee.
Okay, so I agree we should maybe have a review of that part of the policy, and I would move that we get a report back at some point to see what the payouts are like, if in fact there is a considerable amount paid out. And also keep in mind that if we eliminate that payout as part of the policy, you'll probably see quite a number of people adding some personal days off towards the end of the year. They'll just tack it onto their holidays. So that's the other side of the coin.
And that being said there, and I'm just gonna, it's an open meeting here. I went out one time here back a few years ago, see Roger Hogan about something. And they said, Roger's not in, he's got 4 or 5 sick days he's got to use up by the end of the year. To me, is that really the purpose of sick days? But anyway, okay, John, so back to you. You making that a motion?
I'm making that a motion that we get a report on this aspect of the policy, including, how many people are fully using their personal days and what the payouts are and so on. And we can carry on the discussion when that report comes to us.
Okay. So we have a motion by Deputy Reed Wise, seconder. Moved by Kevin. Any more questions or comments on that? Okay, show your hand. All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Anybody opposed? Okay, no one opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, Brian, do you want to go to the summer seasonal employees Township of Stone Mills, please?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. As included in the report, we had a relatively small response to our seasonal employees, which is consistent with last year. We had only 9 applicants, and 4 of those applicants were actually unable to meet the start date. Included in the posting, we had up to 6, as we anticipate a couple of employees being on leave during the summer, parental leave. Based on the recommendation and the information that we have from the candidates, we've got a recommendation for you this evening to appoint 4 students for the position, with the expectation to council that there may be additional requests at a later time to try to get 2 additional students should the circumstances present themselves as far as competing projects. So that's what we have at this point, Your Worship, and we anticipate that there could be up to 2 more, whether they're seasonal or students to be put forth to council for consideration at a later date.
So moved.
So moved. Seconder?
Yep.
Moved by Doug, second by Chair. Just before I call the vote, could you tell me, like Cody McLaughlin, are they any local? I'm not saying local people, like Enterprise, Tamworth, around, or just, anybody that we know, their families?
Yes. One is from, I'll just, without releasing their names,
No.
one candidate is from Enterprise. The second candidate is from Enterprise. A third one is from Yarker. And the fourth one, I'm drawing a blank. Trying to process. No, it's okay. The fourth one is also from Enterprise. One is a new resident Enterprise, and 2 are longstanding residents.
Good. Well, no, I see local kids get involved there.
Yeah, all 4
Okay.
are from the Township, Your Worship.
Yep. Kevin, do you have something before we call the vote?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Brian, are these like college students, Brian, young people going into college, university type, or are they high school or just for the other people, the audience, quite frankly?
Well, they were posted as post-secondary positions, which took a number of candidates out of position based on the June completion for high school. So I believe based on the applicants we have 3 post-secondary students, and we have 1 high school student that has actually elected to take a spare in their lot. Like, he's able to actually take a spare from here on out and graduate and returns to school in post-secondary in the fall. So as a grade 12 student, you're essentially granted 2 spares over the course of your high school, given the current climate and the temperature of 1 class for 22 days. This student has elected to take a spare for his last 2. so that he could accommodate a start date and employment with the township before he goes to post-secondary education in the fall.
Okay, so basically it's all post-secondary students that we're looking for. Yeah.
The next two, your worship, may not be that way. The asterisks that we want as far as another report may be coming forward. The next two may be actually two high school students at a later time in the summer in response to the two employees that will be off for leave.
Very good enough. So we have I think Doug made the motion. I don't know who seconded it right now offhand.
Sure he did.
Sorry?
Sure he did.
Carried it. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, we will go to Chief Building Official Delner, the Stone Mills Building Department, RFQ results, electric vehicles. You want to add to this, Jake?
Yeah, so yeah, on Wednesday of last week, the request for quotation wrapped up for the purchase of these two vehicles. And these were the results, with one set of cars being a fair bit more affordable than others in the market. I'm just wondering if anybody had any questions on that.
Any questions for Jake on the quotes there? Oh, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, Jake, you've looked at these vehicles and inside and outside and all that stuff. And do they meet your requirements, I guess is what I'm looking for. Do you think they'll work for your job and your processes that you have to work through?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Richmond. Yeah, I have no problems with these two vehicles. They'll get us down the road just the same as any other car.
As far, Jake, though, is any equipment or anything like that, you think there's room and they're quite workable, eh?
Thank you, Councillor Richmond. Yeah, I don't think the Kia Niro Electric Sport will come with the standard 15-inch screen and the standard moonroof. But yeah, I think they'll be just fine for what I need to get down the road.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Jake, that's actually a pretty low price. Did we get a special deal because we're buying two and because we're a public agency, or is that just kind of the list price for those vehicles, or do you know?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Reeve Wise. Yeah, no, that's the regular price. And keep in mind that we're getting $5,000 off the federal rebate. So Kingston, the municipality of Kingston, their building department drives nothing but Kia electric cars. And the sales rep at Kingston Kia told me last week that we're not alone, that Kingston Kia actually finished another process with the city of Kingston, and the city of Kingston just ordered 9 more electric vehicles from them last week. So there's other local municipalities that are kind of being supplied by Kia as well. So yeah, that's the list price. There's no deals or anything on that. And I would say right now, Deputy Reeve Wise, from what I'm seeing in the industry, there's a lack of vehicles to sell right now because of supply chain problems around the world. And you're not going to find any deals for new cars right now from what I'm seeing in the market. So
Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I Googled them and the price for them because I wasn't familiar with them. At the price that Jake is quoting on the tender here, you're on the lower end of they do have more expensive models, but you're on the entry end of it. But they certainly look like they got most of the things that you would require in the vehicle. They met the tender, so.
Okay, anybody else? With that, if nothing else, we got looking for a motion to accept the quotation to purchase 2 Kia Niro electric support vehicles for the Stone Mills Township Building Department. Yes, Wanda?
I'm just approving that.
You're making the
I'm moving
motion?
that. Yeah.
Second by Debbie. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, Jake, the Stone Mills Community Center project.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to apologize briefly for some flip-flopping that I've done the last maybe 6 months on some issues where I come to council and say we're going to go this direction, then I show up to council 3 months later and say we're going to go the exact opposite direction. This is another flip-flop where I said that we would kind of separate it into things and separate it as separate competitions, and now I'm flip-flopping saying I want to go to a general contractor and just have basically one tender for all the work. Just wondering if anyone had any questions on my report.
Any questions for Jake? Go ahead, John.
Well, I don't have a question right at the top, but Jake, it's perfectly legitimate. It's just like the virus. You find out more information, you come up with a different policy. So don't worry about it. It sounds like a good approach. It is a fairly technical undertaking, and I think having a general contractor with experience in the field is probably a wise decision, even if it is a bit more money. And I would make the motion.
I have a motion by Deputy Ryan, second by Kevin. Any more questions or comments? Go ahead, Doug.
Just, Jake, have you put a consideration what the increased cost will be, what the markup will be? And do we have the money to cover it? That's all I'm asking.
Yes, Councillor Davison, thank you for the question. I don't know if you know, jobs like this, it could add serious money to it. I will agree with you.
Yeah.
With COVID right now, it is really hard to estimate what we might be getting into in terms of a final price, Doug. It's really hard to estimate. The price of building and construction materials is up so much, over 1 year. It sounds bad, but I think we need to just take it to tender and see what we have. And if it is too expensive, maybe we put it off and try it again next year. It's just, I have no idea what I'm going to get. I hope that 1.25 million is going to do this project, but I can't give you any 100% assurances on that. So,
yeah, my concern only comes from Jake. I did this work for 10 years, and a general usually increases it. I don't want to mention a percentage figure over the air because that could be interpreted literally, but it does increase it substantially. So I hope to. I agree with you. Let's see what we get.
yes, Councillor Davison, I agree with you. It could significantly increase the price. They're not gonna add a few tens of thousands of dollars probably. They won't just add 20,000 on the price or anything, that's for sure. It'll be significant dollars added. I just think that probably, even with that said, it is probably the prudent direction. That's all, Councillor Davidson.
I look back when we did the arena in Tamworth there, I was chairman of the arena board, and I think Belcon did that there, and they were the general, and I think they charged us 1.25% or 2% to manage it and look after thing there, like with the other generals coming in. So, I mean, that was a long time ago too, though. Anyway, I remember dealing with a few of them people at that time. Anyway, we have a motion on the floor. No more comments or questions. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Items for considerations, correspondence from Wayne Goodyear for council consideration, and looking for a motion to council receive the report. Moved by Doug, second by Wenda. Any questions or comments on the report? Okay, we'll start with Wenda, then we're going to go to you, Doug.
So Wayne brought up a lot of points, and a couple of them that I just wanted to highlight was the shoreline, looking at a ratio to the frontage. So if somebody owns 200 meters of shoreline, instead of putting a blanket area for preserving the shoreline, and that we base it on a ratio of how much shoreline they actually have. So I thought that was a good thought, and I hadn't heard of anybody considering that before. The other thing that he really liked, well, two things. One was soil depth. So this, I guess, is directed more towards maybe Jason. He talked about when determining a lot size, planners typically like to take 200 acres and turn it into identical lot sizes. Whereas when we're living in an area where we live, where we have soil depth issues that vary considerably based on karst topography, et cetera, sometimes it might be better to have a lot size based on what the soil depth is. And there are some matrices out there that are offered by OMAFRA that give you some direction on how to, make that part of your bylaw or your official plan. And the third was education. And I know Roger was working on this before he retired. But one of I think Wayne had sent us a website from the government of Maine in the US that spoke specifically to non-traditional contaminants and septic systems. And it gave really clear and very attractive graphics to, pharmaceuticals that you wouldn't put down your septic system, and personal care products, and how to keep a healthy septic system. And I just thought maybe something like that we could add to our website from an educational perspective, and also maybe create a brochure that we could give to people who just bought a new property and were planning to develop it, because a lot of people coming from the GTA, they don't know about septic systems and how to take care of them, and how to prevent them from leaching into the runoff and contaminating water sources. So anyway, those were the three things that I thought that I took away from it that seemed really of value when we're looking at our OP and our website.
Hey, Doug, you had your hand up, and then if anybody else or Jason wants to come in after, we can.
Yeah, I first of all, I commend Wayne. He put a lot of work into that report. I was very impressed that he remembered all the studies. I thought, hey, if all the members of council go back and dig out those studies, they'll learn a lot on the different areas in the township that have had studies done on them, and our soil situations and our contamination issue in the village, certain villages, and that have had remediation work done on it. At the very least, he brought forward a lot of information that people needed to be aware of. Like Wenda, I see three things in here. Two of them, I'm not sure if we can do anything fairly quickly with. I'm not saying we don't need to do something quickly, but I mean, the shoreline protection, which up until just recently, I think most of us thought that first 10 feet belonged to the conservation authority, and now we find that that's not really happening that well. So maybe we need to look at that going down the road. And the other thing that he mentioned was, let's get all this information and hurry up with the official plan. And I'm not sure if we can really put a whip to the official plan. It has to work through the processes. But what he did mention, and I think it's excellent, and Wenda's touched on it too, is the library or the website connection that we could do, allowing us to build a library for people who are not used to living in the country, a place where they can connect and get information. Coincidentally, I had a call just a few days ago from somebody who formerly lived in the city, and their septic system has gone bad. And when you get talking to them, they don't know that they're not supposed to put everything under the sun in the system. And as we all know, we're getting a huge influx of people not born and raised in the country, not used to working with septic systems. So I would like to see us, and I think it's something we can do, and we have an excellent person on staff that could probably set up a link very quickly or within reason, so that people would have places to go and look to get management ideas and that. even the Friends of Napanee are putting out seminars on. There's lots of links that we could get, and I'd like to see us follow up on that one quickly. The other two, I think, will take a little time, but they need following up on also.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thanks. And Wenda and Doug both mentioned things that I would have mentioned myself. And so we're thinking along the same lines. A couple of other things. When I actually received Wayne's email, I was in a Conservation Authority meeting, our most recent one. And I just, in between presentations at that, I just sort of glanced at Wayne's email. And coincidentally, at that meeting, I was planning to raise and did raise one of the issues that he highlights, which is when waterfront properties change hands, often the new owner has very little knowledge about conservation and about how valuable that riparian zone is. And so I asked, I made a motion actually, I think, or certainly got staff to agree to bring back a report to Quinte Conservation about just how quickly does Quinte, or for that matter, our municipality, how quickly do we know when a property has changed hands? And I guess Jason could answer this for me. So suppose a deal closes on a property on the Napanee River, and there's a new owner. How soon do we know that property has changed hands?
Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you to Deputy Reeve Wise. To your point, we do receive transfers. Our tax department receives the property transfer up to date for actual in real time. So that's something that we are made aware of in that new ownership scheme. Whether or not the parcel is a waterfront parcel is something that then would need to be cross-referenced on a GIS system, because often the time there's not necessarily a legal description that makes clear notation to say together with or fronting onto Beaver Lake or Salmon River, or vice versa. But there is absolutely the municipality is notified with respect to changing of ownership on parcels. We have, I say we as in municipal management, have been working with the Conservation Authority management, Quinte Conservation, on a brochure type info package that we believe would be beneficial to waterfront property owners in particular. But that being said, all property owners in the municipality, because truthfully, many of us who don't live on the waterfront do attend friends and colleagues' houses who are on the waterfront, and having a good understanding of the importance of some of those natural features, we find could be an education piece that's more broadly reached to our residents. So in what we're looking at doing is augmenting that information piece with tax billing mail out, and ensuring that there's direct communication via mail to all residents of the municipality. Not necessarily every time tax billing is circulated, but it will be periodically in the future, and maybe potentially geographically focusing on different areas of the municipality, so that we can collectively cover the whole municipality and not burden staff with full workloads of, this billing cycle requires full municipal notification. So I just wanted to offer that piece. We recognizing that the commentary from Mr. Goodyear is primarily focused on the electronic means of communication. But truthfully, in my world, and I don't want to speak for anyone other than myself at this juncture, we're almost inundated, I find, with municipal information electronically, in that there's social media outlets, and there's different websites to go to, and by all means, we actually, as you know, have a great new website that can definitely handle a link and a set of criteria to other organizations that might be able to provide greater insight into certain matters. But I also feel, and we as some of the senior management in the township feel, that I'll call it old school, quote unquote, paper notification via tax billing can be very effective to many of our residents. And that is one way in the very near future that we see moving forward with respect to providing that outreach. I can speak to the other points too further on after we go through some additional commentary. Reeve Smith.
Sherry, you had your hand up, and then we'll go to John. Go ahead, Sherry.
I just wanted to mention if there was some kind of a paper copy of all these rules about, you know, land use and what you can and can't do near waterfront or on any new lot, really, and this may be naive in thinking that they would participate, but is it something that could be literally handed to folks like from like the real estate association or something, if Stone Mills had a pamphlet with all of these resources on it? I don't really know. I've never bought a house. We just built it years ago, and I've never gone through that process. I don't know if that kind of thing could happen.
So thank you, Councillor Milligan. Just quickly, and by no means do I want this to sound condescending. First and foremost, there's a massive amount of set of rules, and the official plan, for example, and the provincial policy and the county's level of official plan, the conservation authority documents and zoning regulation. I say that as in there is somewhat of a challenge in paring that information down to being concise, to being effective, yet also broad in that it can provide a level of education to multiple property owners, given that they're very different in their own respect. So for example, we've had good conversation tonight regarding septic systems and how they differ from, full municipal water and sewer, and what can be treated at Ravensview wastewater treatment plant in Kingston is far different than what your own septic system can handle. And there's most definitely effective communication that can be provided in a one-page pamphlet. I've actually seen from KFL&A Public Health on that, and pairing that in sort of the building permit issuance, for example, for a new build in our municipality, so that new homeowners that are building maybe for the first time on private services are made aware of those. Absolutely. I just feel that we might be getting ourselves into an area where we have 18 different pamphlets collectively, and there's certain properties in the municipality that would trigger every single pamphlet, and other properties that would trigger maybe one or two. So that's just a sense as to where my mind and management's mind is going on how we're effectively communicating certain pieces of information that could be broadly utilized by all homeowners, as opposed to over circulating to some, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John. You had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I know that's a problem. Over communicating means that you don't communicate at all because people just throw up their hands. I like the link idea on our website that links to our various departments and other agencies, but that's passive information. That requires that people are looking for something. I would like to see some printed information that does get handed over to new property owners as soon as possible after they acquire property, particularly those properties that are on waterfront. Septic information is good too, but it takes a while for you to screw up a septic system. It takes an afternoon to cut down all the trees on the bank of a lake or river, which is something that has happened not far from Camden East. If you're going east from Camden East, and I won't name names or addresses, look to the north and you'll see all the trees have been removed from the bank of the Napanee River, and a property owner, in response to a complaint, will now have to spend a considerable amount of money with erosion control to substitute for the job that those tree roots were doing. So it's not just a matter of preventing environmental damage. It's a matter of saving people from having to spend a lot of money. So I'm wondering, Jason, just specific to that issue, is there, you said that we find out very quickly that properties have changed hands, but we don't necessarily know if they're waterfront properties or not. Is there a GIS kind of overlay where we could quickly enter? I mean, you know, it's not like dozens of properties are changing hands every day, where we could quickly enter the property information, and would that tell us if it is waterfront property or not?
Thank you, Deputy Wise. That's absolutely something we'll look into. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think as to how that query would run. And I think my colleague, Mr. Richmond, who's got some very great GIS background skills, can work with us on figuring out how to link that with the specific overlay. But I don't have a great answer as to the exact mechanism, but we'll most definitely look into and figure out how that can work. So that can be something. Just in short, I receive, as you guys are aware, I receive, you know, literally dozens of phone calls a day on what are permitted uses on parcels and what may I do with this and where could I build on that. And often CBO Detler and myself are aware of the majority of properties that are for sale within the township before they're even sold. And if we took some notation as to the volume of calls that we get, or you know, we could have a very good idea to flag certain parcels that you know, that are on the market actively and may be transferred in the near future. So it's definitely something we will take away, Deputy Wise.
Thank you. If I may, that would be good. And I think Conservation Authority staff, in response to my request, will be looking into the same sort of trigger mechanisms to identify those properties. Just in response to Sherry's question about having real estate agents distribute some of this information, and I think some of them do, and how conscientious they are about that would vary. Staff from Conservation, Quinte Conservation, gave a presentation to area real estate agents, I think at some point in the last few years, about that very thing. There was limited interest. When you think about it, the last thing a real estate agent wants to do when they're selling a property is to tell a prospective buyer of a waterfront property, oh, and by the way, here are all the things you can't do. So I think it's really up to us to help people know what is permitted and what's in the best interest of the environment and of their pocketbook. And if we can develop some of these mechanisms that we're talking about, we can prevent some damage both to the environment and financially. Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, we have a recommendation in front of us. Anybody want to make a motion to move that we receive and that council provide directive to management in response to the correspondence? Moved by Wenda, sorry, somebody?
I think we already received it.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, we're just waiting for the vote then. All in favor of the motion? I don't remember doing that.
Ask Brian, but I think we did.
Yes, Your Worship, Councillor Davison was the mover.
Okay, sorry.
Councillor Lalande was the seconder.
Okay, sorry about that. All in favor? Carried. John, do you have something to say?
Well, yeah, all we've done is receive it. I think staff's well aware of what further action we're looking for here. Do you want a separate motion in terms of action?
Might just well. If you
Well,
want
then
to make.
I would move that we investigate trigger mechanisms for staff to become aware of when waterfront property changes hands, and in concert with Conservation Authority, develop some kind of methodology to alert those property owners about their responsibilities. And if anyone wants to add in something about septic systems and so on, or if we can just leave it more general. But I think everybody understands the intent of our discussion here.
You gonna second that, Sherry? Okay. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing consultation on strengthening accountability for the municipal councilors. Anybody want to say anything about this?
Can Brian give us a better explanation, or, like, I don't understand. We have a good code of conduct. Why are we changing it? Why?
Brian, you want to
Yeah,
show us in here?
Yeah. Give me 1 second, Your Worship. Sorry, Your Worship, I just got caught looking at the reports, trying to get back into the Zoom screen. So essentially what's going on is the Ministry of Municipal Affairs has taken on an initiative to strengthen the accountability, transparency, and improve the code of conduct for council members. So they've taken it upon themselves to offer specific areas of education, training, etc. You'll see in that correspondence that they're actually providing a learning opportunity, an education opportunity for council members. And I believe that they're opening this invite up to at least one member of our council to try to improve that code of conduct awareness, Councillor Davis. And I don't think it's anything in absence of what we have. I think it's just Ministry of Municipal Affairs becoming an active partner in trying to educate and keep current council members throughout the province.
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, we have as far as I'm concerned, we have a good code of conduct and have had for a number of years. And I thought it was mandated a little bit from the province. It was kind of a industry standard, for lack of a better word. So I'm wondering if somebody is not following it or whatever, but that's fine.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion from the council to receive the correspondence and the council appoint a council member to participate in the town hall. Anybody willing to?
John, do you want to do it?
Sherry, do you have something? Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'd love to learn more about it. Not that I think there are issues per se, but if it's a learning experience, I would be happy to do that.
Anybody else want to throw their hat in the ring?
I second Sherry's nomination.
Sounds good, John. Okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carrie. Sherry, you can talk to Brian on the details. Okay, and a letter from Quinte Conservation requesting the passing of a resolution pertaining to ministerial zoning orders.
Reeve Smith. My apologies, Deputy Reeve Wise. I think had a comment. I just thought I could provide a very brief update or overview with respect to this item on tonight's agenda. MZOs, ministerial zoning orders, MZOs, are not necessarily new, but they're gaining momentum in their use in the past couple of years, and primarily that being used in the GTA area. Essentially what an MZO is it's a golden ticket or an exemption to all of the Planning Act approvals that someone would typically be normally required to complete. So official plan amendments, zoning amendments, site plan control, for example, and demonstrating conformity with all the requirements that often need to be demonstrated are all negated and thrown out the window when somebody is granted an MZO. Now, some might ask why the province would allow the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to approve such an action when there are all of the rules and regulations put forward by the province. And the short answer to that is the use is supposed to be exclusively for emergency measures. So for example, there was a grocery store reconstruction, I think it was in Elliott Lake, when there was a natural disaster and there was an MZO issued for the reconstruction of that because it was the only, service outlet. There was talk of it being used for Amazon, for example, when they considered that to be an emergency in setting up its distributing factory in a potential GTA location, as opposed to maybe going through a year-long approvals process. And I say these because often the time it causes harm and havoc to your municipality, not only your municipality, but it causes havoc to your conservation authority in that regulations such as setbacks from provincially significant wetlands and areas of natural and scientific interest are overlooked. They are often compromised, and MZOs often turn a blind eye to any of those natural heritage features. And what this request is before us tonight is from Quinte Conservation, requesting that if the municipality was ever to find itself in a position of having an MZO present in our jurisdiction, that we would at least notify the Conservation Authority and provide them the opportunity to offer comment within a 10-day mandated time frame as to whether or not they saw it being compatible and consistent with their policies. This stems largely again from the Toronto Region TRCA, Toronto Region Conservation Authority, where there was an abuse of what some are considering provincially significant wetlands through the actions of an MZO. I personally and professionally think that there's not any concern from supporting the conservation of Quinte Conservation in this request. I think it's very consistent and good land use planning from a public perception and public interest perspective, that it's consistent with what we do on all other forms of applications, and that should this ever reach our jurisdictional bounds, that we continue to uphold our relationship with the Conservation Authority to this regard as the same in which we do through the normal processing of development applications. And I'm happy to answer any question.
John, you had your hand up there just as Jason put his hand up. Did you want something to say?
Yeah, I wanted Jason to explain it all.
Okay. I guess he did it, eh?
I guess he did. It does seem pretty draconian. I didn't even know, and I'm glad he brought up that ministerial zoning orders have been around for a long time, because of course I didn't become aware of them until it became an issue for conservation authorities. And the issue Jason mentioned about the Amazon warehouse was in Pickering, and the minister's zoning order was to allow it to be constructed in a provincially significant wetland, not beside it, but to fill it in. It'd be just like someone coming along from the ministry and saying, we got to fill in Camden Lake because we want to build a warehouse. And then the adding insult to injury, once that goes through and the construction is underway, the Conservation Authority has to enforce the minister's zoning order, which violates all the regulations that the Conservation Authority would normally have in place. Now that really sticks in people's craw. Imagine being an engineer on a conservation authority and being forced to approve and enforce this order, which violates all the principles that you normally operate under. So I would move that we honor the request of the Conservation Authority in this letter and notify them if any such order is imposed on us.
Okay, and we have a second by Doug.
Yep.
Any more questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Items for information. Brian, you want to talk to council about our Friday night meeting with the COVID? Maybe he left us.
I haven't left, your worship. I just had to get out of the screen and this one. Your worship, council members, I have some really exciting news. The last the reeve is speaking of a Friday night evening. We were made aware on Friday afternoon that KFLNA had allocated a sizable number of dosage to facilitate a partnered mass vaccination clinic in the township of Stone Mills. This clinic is going to be very quick. It's going to be May 8th, this Saturday at the Public Works Yard. We've been working with the physicians teams, both Newburgh and Tamworth, over the weekend. And late this morning had discussions with KFLNA. We've actually had the increased dosage to 600 dosage allocated for a clinic that's going to take place this Saturday. So both Newburgh and Tamworth are actively hitting their practices to try to secure the individuals seeking vaccination in accordance with the provincial standards. So I guess quietly, my message is, if you're over the age of 50 and you have not received your shot, please, and you're a member of either of those practices, please reach out to them and they can work to get you coordinated to get your shot in Stone Mills this Saturday. So just to advise council, the municipal role in this is, I've been working with Fire Chief Thompson, and the plan is, from a community support perspective, we're going to have volunteer firefighters working the front and end lines of this, from a traffic flow in and screening, and a traffic flow out after they've received their shot, to ensure that individuals are safe enough to drive. We will have administration there doing some registration of patients, and we'll be supporting the two practices this week as they get the information entered into the COVAX website. So we're really excited that we have an opportunity for our community to get their shots in Stone Mills, as prior to last weekend, both of our practices were unable to secure vaccinations to offer community clinics. And given our unwarranted participation in the COVID statistics, we're really excited to hopefully get some opportunity for our people to get vaccinated in Stone Mills. So at this point, there's a booking link that's been provided to the two medical practices that they have access to. It's not a public link. They have to be booked through those two locations. But we would encourage anybody, and of course, we hope the practices at some point put out some sort of notification, but we're excited to have this offered inside of our township.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Brian, if somebody wasn't with those two doctor practices and hasn't been able to get it, would it be possible for them to phone one or two, or either one of the practices, and possibly put their name on a list?
The answer to that is, Councillor Richmond, quite honestly, and I can't speak for the practices, but stay tuned, I guess, is the response. The hope is that the KFLNAs look very favorably upon us doing a mass vax. They're getting pharmacies doing way smaller numbers than what we're envisioning doing this Saturday. They're very excited that we have the support from both practices to do it as far as vaccinations go. If I'm being honest with you, Councillor Richmond, I believe that there is going to be a need for a greater reach, because there is a number of our current clientele, if you will, that have already been vaccinated, that are in that age group. But I just can't, I would not suggest that anybody start calling. I would suggest that later on in the week, if that opportunity presents itself, that link will be posted to the public, and we will make sure that the 600 vaccinations are in arms on Saturday at the Public Works Department.
Very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the people that worked hard to get this. This is fantastic news for us. And of course, thank our staff for efforts that they're going to put forward to deliver. I, like Kevin, have concerns that it's just limited to the two practices. And I'm only basing that on 600 names, vials of shots is a lot of shots. And in that age group, there's a lot of the older people have already got their shots. I would like to see every one of those shots used. So I'm wondering if there's something we can do up front, or make a decision now that would assist the two practices. And I guess what I'm thinking is, can we set a cutoff date here of, say, Thursday night or something like that? If we don't have 600 people coming from the two practices, can we call CKWS or something and let the public know in the community that there's room to call a number or something. I would hate to see any unused doses here.
Your worship, that won't happen.
Go ahead.
That won't happen with unused dosage, as Councillor Davison. The consideration that we're giving the two practices, and I know Councillor Milligan has an employment relationship with one of those practices. We're just not able to wait that long. Thursday is not that day, Councillor Davis, and it will be before that. If there's not very clear,
I'm happy with it before that.
if we're not going to fill this, there's changing essential working designations. There's healthcare. There's essential worker designations. There's a lowering of age to 50. We're going to be pressuring, and I apologize to say this in this forum with Councillor Milligan. If we're not full by Wednesday evening, we're going to be pressuring this group. Given how hard we've lobbied to get these vaccinations, we're going to be lobbying to open up a link on social media, broader, have it, spread through in that direction, and assign additional staff members to taking bookings in addition to the medical practice. So the medical teams, and go ahead, Councillor Milligan, if you want to speak from.
No, you finish.
So we're saying, Councillor Davison, is if we get against the wall and we've exhausted their clientele, so to speak, or it starts to slow, we have the ability to post the link and we can actually book into that link as well, not just to their clientele, but we wanted to get, because we've been without vaccinations, we wanted to try to get those two practices their highest priority candidates prior to opening up that link. We're all on the same page. It's just, we only had 7 days from the time we were getting 400 on Friday to getting 200 more this morning. So we're finding
that, Brian, that's great. I mean, most people I know in my age group have already got their shots. That's my only concern, is that we don't have enough people to fill it in the practices. I hope we do, but I just want to make sure that if we do have room, and you've answered that question, sounds like we're gonna.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just want to say that absolutely, we're going to use all the shots, and after a good full day tomorrow of booking people, we'll gauge what's going on, and if we need to open it up, we absolutely will. And I just need people to know too that this would not have happened, at least not this weekend, without Brian's hard work. I think I speak for all the staff of the two offices. We don't have 5 minutes in a day to make extra calls and be hounding public health about this, but Brian stuck with it, and it was his doing. He made this happen, and I can't thank him enough for doing that. I mean, the doctors are thrilled, and you don't know what it feels like to finally be able to get shots in arms. And again, this clinic would not be happening without Brian's hard work. So I thank him again for the 100th time, but it's just incredible what he and Jeff and the organization at the office, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
All good. That's right. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Brian, and we'll move on here. Any new business or statements from members? Debbie, go ahead. Can't hear you, Debbie.
You shut off.
You're still on mute.
There, how's that?
We hear you now. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make council aware, I received some correspondence from Brian Murphy this week in regard to the Sports Hall of Fame wall in Cameras Arena. He would like to see it reactivated, or members that he really feels strongly should be on that board. And I know as soon as he reached out, I got another letter, and they have a couple. So I don't know where council wants to stand with this, but there definitely seems to be still a desire to continue the Wall of Fame in Tamworth.
Okay, I guess that's something. I guess the only thing I would say to these people here is there's certain criteria, if I'm not mistaken, that well, I put it, criteria have to be met to be nominated. So I guess maybe Brian, do you want to put that on the agenda for next meeting, and maybe we can discuss it? Is that fair enough with everybody?
Yep.
I will, your worship. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from Doug? You got your hand up in front of your face.
Yep.
I can hear it. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering here at the end of April's come, what the community reports were back on the lot in Camden East. If we're going to make a parquet out of it, it's time to be thinking about getting it done. So I'm wondering if there's a report on that.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. I just quickly, we're still receiving communications, and I have several phone calls set up this week to have continued conversation with some interested residents. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull the report together for tonight's meeting, but it will be on the next council agenda with a full summary of all of the information that we've received. I don't even recall off the top of my head right now, but there's several dozen separate submissions. So there's a good amount of information, and it's been very well received by members of the community. So we've, I guess, technically extended slightly just to ensure that we could take on some additional commentary and not have it cut off for tonight's meeting. So it will be on the next agenda. Thank you.
Okay, who had their hand up? I know Kevin did it. Go ahead, Kevin, then we'll go to you, Wenda.
Yeah, just to Jason or whoever, building CBO Detler. Has there been any more discussion? Is there a chance of building an actual post office again, or is that gone? And where do we stand with that? I mean, I know they were working to get something. Is that a temporary fix in one of the other buildings, or are we out of the race when it comes to building a new post office? I guess is what I'm looking at.
Through you, Reeve
okay.
Smith, just as of today, Councillor Richmond, we were in communication in a meeting with architectural firm from Toronto, working on a concept for an existing building in the hamlet of Camden East, which would be retrofitted to accommodate post office back in the village itself. Not on municipal owned property. So not able to share much additional information at this time. But that said, there's still ongoing meetings with design requirements, layout, access, etc. But that is still underway.
So if that goes, Jason, then there's no need to build a post office, or is that the idea behind that? Eh? Like
Yeah.
Once it's in there, it's good to go for ever or whatever, I guess. Eh?
Yeah. Through you, I can't speak to term on lease. That's obviously private information between private property owner and Canada Post. But the assumption would be, that would be of a term that would not make municipality viable in constructing a new building, in the hopes that within a 1 or 2 year time frame of full build out that they would be coming back as a tenant.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Wenda. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, so this, I guess, is directed towards Jason as well. Last fall or summer even, when we were wrapping up the Slack Farm issue, there was a lot of discussion about reviewing the site plan control bylaw and the official plan. And I just wondered, Jason, where we might be seeing that in the future regarding public health and safety, environmental impact, and public notification.
Thank you, Councillor Lalonde. It's a fantastic question, and I apologize I didn't have an information report provided for update with respect to timing. With just respect to the whole gamut of policy and regulatory review, I think I mentioned in the past, my initial thought and continued path forward was to update the policy first and foremost, which is our official plan document, to ensure that then the levels of regulation, site plan control, intensive livestock bylaw, zoning bylaw, and those regulations then fall beyond after your policy is updated, so that you can ensure that they're aligned with that higher level governance. Our official plan update is moving along very well. We have first comment. We've had a very productive meeting with the County of Lennox and Addington, who is one of the ultimate approval authorities, although the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is. We've started with the county because if we're not aligned with the upper tier official plan, obviously we have challenges first and foremost. So we've started with that, and that has been completed. So we're working on some of the commentary back from them. And once we have gotten to that stage, I anticipate moving forward for public consultation on council's agenda, which I see as a separate meeting, not piggybacking onto a council meeting just based on sheer volume, length, and complexity of the document, and that being scheduled in June timeframe. So that's the first major document that will be brought out publicly with respect to seeking input and consideration of council, whereas the intensive livestock bylaw, site plan control bylaw are not at that time frame. They would be following because of the language inclusions in the official plan itself.
Okay, anybody else? Some new business? Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not sure if it's Brian or Jason who would be dealing with this one, but we are under an interim control bylaw on expanding or establishing cannabis operations in the township. During that period of interim control, we are gathering information about drafting policy in regards to that issue. And Brian and I have chatted about this informally, and I just thought it should be brought forward so that the public has some idea of where we're at. And I'm just wondering, Brian, if you could give us an update as to where we stand with that policy development issue.
Thanks, Deputy Reeve Wise. I know Jason, Manager of Development Services, has been working with our legal team following the comments received, Deputy Reeve Wise. At this point, as most of council are aware, the one-year interim control bylaw is set to expire, I believe, July 15th, 2022. The interim control bylaw was put in place to allow more time for consideration and for the municipality to essentially do their due diligence in what we would permit, how we would permit it as it relates to the Planning Act. We have had discussions with the township solicitor on just some of the difficulties that we've had during that time. Some of these circumstances are before the courts, which have not had a chance to appeal or proceed as a result of COVID. Those cases have not been heard. We also know that AMO has a working group that is working with policy advisors to make recommendations to Health Canada on the same very matters that we would be considering, as far as, you know, whether it's site conditions, whether it's minimum distance separations, the regulation of limit of license numbers, all of those, you know, approval authority conditions that we would have concerns of as part of implementing that bylaw. So the answer to that question is, Deputy Reeve Wise, without trying to skirt the question, is it's in progress. We're working with our legal team. We're prepared to move forward should we be told that we, quite honestly, that we have to. But at this point, we're also exploring the opportunities of delaying that until which some of those other decisions, such as Health Canada's position, such as some of the court proceedings to determine the limitations of the municipality. So we are in the process, I suspect, over the next couple of weeks we'll be looking to confirm with Mr. Fleming what our options are. And then we'll be making recommendations to council based on what we've received, as well as what we're seeing in the field, as far as if we don't extend the interim control bylaw, what those limitations and suggestions would be for grow operations in the municipality.
Thank you.
Any other new business, members? If not, we'll have the confirmation bylaw, confirming the bylaw, the May 3rd, 2021 Stone Mills Council meeting. Moved by Wenda, second by Kevin. All in favor of the motion? I have a motion to adjourn. Sherry and John, all in favor? Great. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Aye.
Take care.